What do you think is the main thing that leads to this action? And so you're talking about corruption. Why do I think there's corruption? That's the question?
Yes.
Okay. I can tell you it very simply. It's because we're human beings. And human beings are prone to do things the easy way.
Yeah.
They are greedy. Sometimes it's out of embarrassment because we're prideful. So we want to cover for ourselves, or we want things, and that's just human nature. If somebody has really good parents and they're raised right, so that you understand that, be honest for honest's sake. Be honest even when it costs you something. Tell the truth all the time, even when you'll be embarrassed or you'll be, it'll look bad. If you're raised that way, you're more likely to be honest and that sort of thing. Not everybody is that's raised properly, but it's a better chance. But it's so much ingrained in human beings, and it doesn't matter if they're Kazakh or if they're Russian or if they're American or if they're British or anybody else. Everybody has that. We all tend to want things, do it easy way. I don't want to be embarrassed. Chinese is a whole big culture, save face, basically. So that's why we have it. And that's the very simplistic answer to it. But I think that would cover just about most things.
Okay.
All right. So tell us briefly how our university has become what it is today since its founding. I'm not sure in regards to what? In regards to lack of corruption, just what we are?
Like academic integrity, that's
Generally.
Okay, because the next question asks also about academic integrity in the university culture.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. Yes.
Okay, well, I'll kind of roll those together. Academic integrity is and has been, I would say, in my opinion, it's not as good as it was in the West, but it has been really a hallmark or an important part of Western culture, Western education. And that takes its form in many different ways. Some of it is just economics. Because if I invent something and I put a patent on it, then I am entitled to get money from that patent. I'm entitled to earn money. And that has to do with sort of the Western view of capitalism and ownership and those kind of things. And that's why we think plagiarism is stealing, because it's not your idea. It's okay to use that idea, but you have to say who the idea came from. And it's the same thing like with a patent or something like that. And so that it's all kind of integrated together as far as academic integrity. So if we didn't have academic integrity, there would be no plagiarism. I could, you two guys could, maybe he's really smart in math, he helps you with your math, and you're good in English and you help him write his paper. Okay, who should progress? Neither one of you, because you're not good in math, he's not good in English, and we don't have the student that is capable. So we want to reward on merit, and we want to know who does it. So those are the things that are important as far as what comes through with academic integrity. But as part of Western culture, which I would say is less so than it used to be. Also tied up probably a lot in the Christian Judeo belief of how lying is so bad. That's one of the things that in the old medieval times they talked about it being one of the cardinal sins as far as just straight lying, which seems it's not so important, but it is, to tell the truth. It's hard to do, and always to do it, to make sure every word that you're saying is exactly what you're meaning, and you're not trying to hide something. So I think that, kind of goes together. And I would say that NU, because they reached out and started with a lot of Western academics,
Mm-hmm.
they brought that culture here to say, okay, we're going to really make it strong. We want it to be, we were told this is to be like a Western university in a number of areas, research and academic integrity and merit-based and those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought that culture in, and it's been pushed a lot. I would say the vice provost, Dr. O'Donnell, is the biggest champion of that. She really, really wants us to have a reputation of integrity. We try to get the culture going even from the NUIT. You guys took the NUIT?
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. Remember how it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't bring anything in but a clear water bottle, you have your ID.
It was more straight than we expected.
Like considering Yente, Kazakhstan,
Yeah.
it's far more complex about integrity, about cheating. But there were so many strict rules.
Mhm.
But in the end, we kind of cheat. I've heard so many cases.
That did she
Yes.
in NUIT?
No, in
Oh,
UNT.
in UNT, yeah.
Yes.
Unity.
Yeah.
In NUIT, this is the straight.
It's
You need to
impossible.
this to follow the rules,
Yeah.
and it's like not normal, not for us. Like
Right. Well, because going back to, we want it to be fair for each one of you.
Mm-hmm.
If we let him bring in some, okay, last year a girl came in Nomadi.
Mm-hmm.
A girl, we were checking, I don't know if they had you roll up your sleeves to make sure that you didn't have anything written on your arm.
Yeah.
This girl comes over, or they brought her over to me. She had math equations on her arm. Okay, it was before the test started, and according to Cambridge rules, it's not malpractice yet. Or malpractice is not cheating yet, because the test hasn't started. You're not under test conditions yet. So I said, okay, what are you doing with that? She said, oh, that was for my chemistry test yesterday. So we know she's a cheater, because she said she's a cheater. She tried to cheat in her chemistry test. Although it looked like math equations and not really chemistry information. So I said, go wash it off. So she went and washed it off, and you could see that it's gone. And I said, okay. She said, what's going to happen? And I said, I'm writing it as an incident report. And what that means is if I even think you maybe are cheating in some way, I'm going to write you up for cheating. Because I know basically you're a cheater. Okay? So we try to start really from the NUIT to say we don't tolerate cheating. We want everybody to come in based on their abilities and not that they cheated in some way. At the beginning, that was last year. This year we had very few cases. Previously we had more. People might try to come in with a phone, they might kind of come in with a piece of paper, a number of things they tried. But there's not that many anymore. I think the word is going out there, don't try. What we have now is that when we say, stop, put down your pencil, the math test is now over, some people are going, and then we write them up. Because they're taking time that maybe you stopped and you have 2 questions left and you think, oh, I didn't get that, even guess at those. Somebody else puts them down. We don't catch all of those because they can, we're trying to pick up the papers real quickly and all of that. But we give them like 2 seconds to process, because you're sitting there and maybe you're filling in the last one and they say stop. And you want to make sure it's dark enough. So you're going to take just a second to make sure it's dark. Or maybe you just started to put it in, and so we give you a couple seconds. But if it goes beyond that, then we'll write it up as a malpractice, a potential. But what we do is we don't leave it up to one person that says, oh, you're cheating, you're out of the room. right?
Mhm.
We write it up and we say, you need to say afterwards, and then we say, I'm accusing you of writing, questions after the time was over, it was 10 seconds afterwards, or whatever it is. Then you get a chance to make your statement. I didn't hear them, I didn't know, whatever they say. We had one girl this year who wrote and said, but it was only 2 questions. It's like, so you admitted that you knowingly put answers down after that. So it's like she's gonna be disqualified based on 2 questions, basically.
And if she said something else, like she could be like going on.
Depends, because it's hard to know. It's hard for us to know exactly. So I told the invigilators, I want as much information as you can. It was 10 seconds afterwards. It was 20 seconds. I saw them put down their pencil. They picked it up again and did it, or something, But if most of them, it's like in that 2 to 5 second range. And so how accurate is the invigilator? What does the student, actually say? And we'll sit there in a committee and we will, come up with what we think is what we understand of the situation. If it's clear to us that they cheated, then we will disqualify. If there's an element of doubt, we may not disqualify, because that's pretty serious. And we don't want to disqualify somebody if it's like, 1 second, or something different. So for example, another example, this is the only one I know of this year. Where are you guys from?
Shymkent.
Almaty.
Taras, like
Taras.
south parts.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay.
Almost.
Well, I was not south, I was in Uralsk. And giving the test, and I could see the guy was sitting on the outside row. There's nobody to this side, and there's a good space. There was a good venue, but he was like this, and I could see he's looking at this girl's paper next to him. So I went going down there really fast, and I got right in his face, and I said, "You keep your eyes on your own paper. If I see you do anything, I'm going to write you up for cheating." Because I think you can't prove necessarily, I'm sitting there like, you're in there for an hour, it's going on 2 hours, you haven't got out of your seat, you're tired, and you're pretty much done, or you're bored, or whatever. And it's like, if I do that, I'm not really trying to look at somebody's paper, but it might look like I'm looking at somebody's paper. So I don't want to disqualify them based just on that. But so I usually give them at least 1 warning. I did see one guy who was going like this, and he went like this. Well, he hadn't even looked at his own paper, so he obviously took that. And so I wrote him. That was a couple of years ago. But so this guy, I wrote it down as an incident. He was warned. Now Cambridge has this statistic. It's called Angoff Index, and they will look at all of his answers, right and wrong, and compare them to everybody else's answers, right and wrong. And if somebody is matching that, then that means he copied, because he got the same wrong answers as somebody else. And that's unlikely. It's like, they tell me 1 in a billion chance or something. There's for some of these cases. If he has a high Angoff index with the girl over here, then I know he was cheating from her on a regular basis, and we will disqualify him because he's warned. But if I just get the Angoff index, I can't do it, because I don't know, did she cheat from him? Did he cheat from her? If there's nobody that said I saw them looking, that's why I want everything to be written down. So we have these incident reports. You go to the bathroom, we write down you went to the bathroom. Sometimes people have tried to leave things in the bathroom, so we check the bathrooms before we let anybody go to the bathroom. All of this stuff, we're trying to do. Along with that, and you're talking about the UNT, there's a professor in the Graduate School of Education who wrote a paper about the UNT, and I'm not sure the administration of it, I think. I'm not exactly sure what it was. He called me. He wrote to me and he said, you know, all of these guys that, there's like 50 people who work for the government and do the UNT are coming over to NU, and he's going to talk to them. They're going to ask him questions about his paper and that kind of stuff. Because this is research. He said, it'd be interesting to them if you talked about how you do the NUIT. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it that day because it gave me like 15 hours warning. But Baljan, who also is our chief administrative officer, who's been working very closely with all of this, I said, it's probably better if you do anyways. You can speak to him in Russian and you explain what we do. And so she talked very briefly, because it wasn't really what they had come to do, but very briefly about how we do all that. And they were very interested in, you know, the fact that we don't kick somebody out right away. And we explained how we let them finish the test as long as they're not causing a problem to other students. Because I'll tell you a story about me when I was in Iraq. I saw these guys, and I was sure this guy was cheating. He was kind of a jerk anyways, but I thought he was a smart guy, but I thought he was leaving his paper so this other girl could look. And I grabbed his paper away from him. I can't remember the details now, but I was wrong. He wasn't. And so it's always good not to assume that they are cheating, or that, you know, I make that one decision in that 1-2 seconds when I'm really angry that he's cheating. It's better just to say, I'm going to accuse you of cheating, and let them give their statements, and then we can do all that afterwards. So I think, you know, starting with the NUIT, starting with the Western sort of culture that we're bringing into the university, and because of some people who champion it, like Dr. O'Donnell, there are, you know, we've made academic integrity a very strong tradition, you know, a very strong trait of what we're trying to accomplish here. There's obviously been people who's cheated. I can tell you some crazy stories about people who cheated, you know, some years ago. And I don't think we were as strict on them as we should have been always. The other thing that we do, and I don't know, probably other universities have this too, we have the student code of conduct, right? So the student code of conduct is there. I think that kind of gets to one of your other questions too, because what systems, you know, maybe that's somewhere in there, but the idea of I can't just accuse you of cheating because I don't like you, right? Your professor can't say, oh, you're a cheater, I'm going to kick you, I'm going to give you a bad grade. The student code of conduct is there also to protect you. And so you have rights to hearings, you have rights to appeal, you have, you know, evidence has to be presented, it has to go through different committees. So it's not just that we don't want you to cheat, we don't, but it's also that you have your legal rights if you are accused of it. Now maybe you're guilty, maybe you're not, but you have, you know, there's a due process of law so to speak, so that it's kept fair. So I think all of that goes into making a culture where, you know, we respect your rights, you know, we want you to respect the rules that we have here. And so that's a lot. I kind of got off track here a little bit. So where are we at? What systems can be built to have fewer cases? You know, I think that goes back a little bit to why there are human nature, right? So what systems, the system can be circumvented, right? You know circumvented?
Yes.
Okay, so to go around it, you know. They can always be circumvented one way or the other. You know, somebody will try this or do that, or, you know. So you can beat the system sometimes. So systems can work to a certain extent, but what we need is the students themselves to say, I'm not going to do this. Because if I do, then my degree will not be as valuable. Because maybe I was totally honest, but if I allow, you know, other people to be dishonest, then their degree is not a real degree. It's partly fake. And if that, you know, if they tried to go to grad school and they don't go, or they just can't do what they said they were going to do, they didn't learn what they should have learned, then that brings down the university, and so then my degree is not as valuable. So it really needs the desire of the students primarily to say, we're going to uphold the standards to the highest level because we want to be recognized as good, basically, to have high quality. Okay? So that's really, how can you, with systems, it's not a system so much as it's just people making that decision, the desire to be honest with everything. Transparency, that was one, okay, there was a question about transparency, and I said that's student code of conduct. I sort of answered that. I'm rolling around here in all your questions. And what, in your opinion, what role do policies and regulations play in preventing corruption in higher education institutions? I think I've kind of touched on that. It's not really so much the rules. They help make it clear what's required, what's permitted. Because define plagiarism. I can show you a book over there. The second edition of Writing for Graduate Students has a list of, it's about 9, 10, 11 sentences, and they say, is this plagiarism? It's like the first one, yeah, obviously. Second one, yeah, it is. The third one, yeah, this is probably plagiarism. Fourth one, maybe, kind of. Fifth one, well, maybe not. Sixth one, no, that's not that. And the authors put that in there in the second edition. And they said they disagreed, the two authors. One drew the line between 4 and 5, and one drew the line between 5 and 6. Because there's some gray area about what is plagiarism. In the next edition, because I got the next edition, they took all of that out. It's there, but they don't try to define it. I think they got too much, trouble from that because everybody wants it to be clear. Well, it's not exactly clear. There are some things that are clear. So that's where we run into problem, But if you collude, collusion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you collude, okay, that's a problem. But what if I told you it's okay to work together? Where do you, you're doing group work right now. You can't really collude with each other because it's a group work. And I might tell you in a math class, you can compare your answers with somebody else, but I want you to do your own work. Well, how do I know you did your own work? Working with somebody can be very rewarding as far as a learning experience. But if I'm going to grade that, then I want to make sure I'm grading your work and not somebody else's. So this is the problem. And having policies and procedures in place helps to define that for you. What is collusion? Where do we draw the line with collusion? If it's not done in the syllabus, which it should be also. So those are some things that can help with that. Yes, again, the protection for you and to make sure you understand what it is. I think that's the more important part. I don't think it'll stop it. Paper rules, regulations don't stop crimes. But it makes it clear what is the crime. Okay? How can the university effectively communicate its anti-corruption efforts to the wider community? Do you mean to Kazakhstan or do you mean to NU community?
Overall, you can say about Kazakhstan.
And also about the new community.
Okay, well, at the NU community, I think we're doing that the best we can. Student government has different things that they put forward. There are sometimes not really workshops, and there's sort of seminars or something that might talk about, speakers might come in. It certainly is something that is brought forward a lot of times. And I've got a problem with that, which I'll get to in a minute. If we're looking at the Kazakhstan community, more widely, that's a little bit harder to do. You don't want to go over to Kazku and say, oh, you guys aren't doing it right. They're not going to receive that. And actually, they're doing some work in it, and there's kind of a consortium of universities that want to raise the academic integrity in the country. So I think what we can do is sort of lead by example, share policies, share ideas, those kind of things. But again, it's an internal thing. It's an issue of the heart. You've got to decide this is what you're going to do. The students have to decide, and so does the management. I can tell you a story. One of those stories when I first got here. Professors didn't want to bring a cheating charge against a student. At the end of the first semester, the problem was, it would take a while to get to the hearing and all of this, and the faculty couldn't go on leave. They didn't get a holiday because they were waiting, to have this hearing, and so it's like, I missed 7 days of leave to wait to get this all done. So some of them decided it's not worth doing that, so I'll ignore the fact that somebody might have cheated or something like that. I don't know the individual exactly, but that story was told to me by someone who did know. So that can happen. I don't think we have that same thing now because it's kind of run differently. The point I was going to make, can you discuss any challenges you anticipate in facing and implementing an anti-corruption framework to this university? I think we're already there. So I don't anticipate, you have to always keep on top of it. You can't let it go or start to ignore it. Because then, it'll get out there that we're cheating. And now I remember what I was going to say. Here's what I think. Let's say, what's your name? Loret?
Nordaulet.
Nordaulet. Let's say Nordaulet cheated. Cheated on the math exam. Okay? Pretty bad. And so math teacher calls him in, the HOD calls him in, they come to we have a hearing, and we say, we're going to give you a 0 on the math test. Okay? But that's confidential. You don't know that he got a 0 on the math test. You don't know that he cheated on the math test. And so the next math test, you're thinking, oh, yeah, maybe I can cheat because that way, I didn't study, I don't know the subject part as well, so I'm going to cheat. If you knew that he got a 0, it maybe would say, well, maybe I shouldn't cheat because if I get caught, I get a 0. If I don't do poorly, I might get a 50, which is better than a 0. So the problem is, because the way the university is set up, we keep those things confidential. Students don't necessarily know about it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to put in the newsletter, not his name,
Like the statistics.
but some statistics that might say, 3 people were cheating in the math test. One blatant cheating, they got a 0. 2 were caught cheating on part of it, and they were both reduced by 50%.
Yes.
Because then people will know, people get caught when they cheat. People get punished when they cheat. The problem might be, he might have cheated and we didn't catch him. And then he'll say, aha, I cheated. But I think that might help. The same thing with all these hearings. There's faculty that get in trouble. And they go to a hearing, and it's, if it's really serious, maybe, all of a sudden they're gone. Oh, where did so-and-so go? Oh, I don't really know. Don't know what happened. It's like if you did know what happened, maybe you would be careful. Also, it shows that the university is concerned about sexual harassment or about, these different things. They say, oh, you're not concerned. It's like, yes, but when we have a hearing, it's always confidential. And people don't know that. So I'm thinking of doing this next year, putting it in the newsletter. Anybody that cheats will put at least the statistics.
In Astana IT, they made something like this, shame screen. Have you heard about that? Like, if someone cheated, they put their picture in.
They do.
Yes.
Name, like whole university, they're like discussing that it's not a good thing, something like that.
Well, it's not. For example, what if I do it to somebody who's 17 years old? Legally, they're not an adult, right? Now what kind of trouble could I get into? Because I've defamed somebody. Or the other thing that can happen, what if I really think you cheated. We went through the hearing and you cheated. And so we put your name up there, or we put your face up there. And then somebody comes forward and says, no, he didn't cheat. That wasn't collusion. I was the one that did it, or whatever. It's like, okay, now we've just ruined his reputation by making a mistake. So that's why we want to really be careful and not, I don't think we have made those kind of mistakes, but there's always the possibility. And so to ruin somebody's reputation on that. Besides, this is foundation. This is where you learn about plagiarism, okay? We'll probably change how we handle plagiarism and penalize it next year, because I've never really been happy with it. I think this is where you learn this is plagiarism, because I can ask people, what's the definition of plagiarism, and you can tell me, but when it comes to practice, it's not easy to always identify. So we can say, oh, this paragraph right here, this is what you did. That's why this is plagiarism. And then you can say, oh, okay, now I understand. I won't do that. And so the first time, it should be really a training. And it's the same thing. If you're coming from, and we've had people tell us this, in my school, we all cheated. We did this or whatever, we shared answers, whatever it might be. We're not going to allow that. But are you going to be able to just go, oh, I'm not going to cheat anymore? So I think this is where you learn it. And this is one of the advantages to coming to Foundation. When I go recruiting, I say this, you can make a mistake here and it's not so costly. You make a mistake there and you get, plagiarism, or some kind of cheating, and you get a 0, you might get a bad grade, you might have to retake the course, your GPA is not so good, you might not, and it follows you through all your transcripts. Here, you can make that mistake, and as long as you learn from it and don't do it, and you progress, then you can start with a clean, 0s and build on that. You don't have something that you already got on your permanent record. So it's an advantage to coming to Foundation, and then I think we should allow that advantage to be where you really learn about these things. But there comes a time when it's like, okay, we can't, let you plagiarize for the 6th time. You need to learn that you can't do this. So we have to balance it. But I do think Foundation should be where we, make sure you understand the culture of the university. How can the university work with government agencies and other stakeholders to combat corruption in higher education at a national level? I don't know. That's above me, to a certain extent. Maybe at a conference I can share or something like that. But that's, I think, just the culture that we develop and the reputation that we develop is going to speak to, it's going to be the provost, the president, that are interacting. And I don't know. I do teach somebody English who's in the government. And we talk about NU, we talk about the university. He's fairly high in the government, but education is not his thing. So, I can have a little influence there, perhaps, but it's not anything official or formal. But other people should have, or will have that sort of input. I think also our graduates from GSE and GSPP, as they go out with that sort of knowledge and principles into the workforce, whether it's in education or in the government work, that'll start to do it. So, it take time, probably, but I think those are probably the best ways and the quickest ways that the university can make an influence.